I moved to Bangalore, which we are streaming this on YouTube, is it?
I have no clue.
I'm really sorry about that. It's just for students who are unable to join right now
Okay.
because the Zoom meeting
Okay.
has a participant limit.
I would have cleaned up a little bit more if you had told me this before. Okay, all right. Yeah. So I did my bachelor's in Bombay at St. Xavier's College, and then I moved to Bangalore after that to the Indian Institute of Science, where I did an integrated master's and PhD course. And after ISC, I moved. So I decided that I didn't want to go abroad, and I wanted to continue to do science in India. And so I moved to Pune initially as a research fellow, which was on an independent fellowship, and now I'm an assistant professor here, and I teach and I do microbiology. Right, that's my academic journey. The non-academic journey is. I don't know. There's several things. I suppose the most significant is that I'm also a musician. I sing, and I took to music at some point during my teenage years. My mother is a singer, which is how I started to sing, and I started learning music from her. And I found that it was nourishing a part of my personality that science was unable to, or academics were unable to. And so I basically lead this sort of double life where my day job is science and my everything after that is music, and there's some other stuff in between, which we'll not talk about that because now we're on YouTube, so we'll that's not necessarily G-rated, so I don't think I can talk about the other stuff that happens in my life. But yeah, that's my journey so far, and we will see where life goes in the next few years.
Can I say something? Hello.
Of course you can.
Yes.
To those to the younger generation, I would like to tell that Nishad is a wonderful Hindustani classical singer. I have heard him, and I have never heard him enough. He's really, really good. Okay, so you don't be misled by his hair. You know that maybe he deliberately does it. You know. Because you see, the musician people have to be slightly out of the track. And I mean, he fulfills all the, but you can forget the rest. He has amazing voice, and I'll tell you, your life at ISER is incomplete if you have not heard him really sing. So I don't know when the opportunity comes, but and I don't care if all this goes on YouTube. But he's an amazing singer, and I'm sure Sudha will agree with me. You need to hear him. And if nobody agrees with me, my wife is here who will support my argument.
Hello,
okay, somebody just pull out this segment. I will put it on my website so that this testimonial is available for everybody to see. Okay, yes. Okay, Jashika, chalo. Now let's open the floor to questions, I think.
Nishad, people have heard you on DD Sayadri and all, man.
Yeah. Let's not go there.
No, okay, you should tell us more about DD Sayadri.
No. Another time. There was, so last year during the lockdown, so there was a project. So everybody does. So during the lockdown, you can't meet people, right? And you can't, studios were shut and everything was just it was a mess, right? So so a few of us, I think maybe about 16 or 17 of us, got together and we recorded. So one of my senior guru behens, which means she learned from the same guru as me, so she composed a song which was sort of like a song of hope, sort of. And so each of us recorded one line at home, and then somebody mastered it, etc. And then they put the whole track together. And then DD Sayadri, I don't know how they got a hold of it, but they got hold of it and they've been playing it ever since. So I have random people in my neighborhood saying, "Arey, I saw you on TV." And things like that. So it feels good because ghar baithe publicity ho gayi to.
Oh, wow.
Okay, all right. Chalo, Jashika, let's take questions now.
So the floor is open for the audience. Yeah, anyone can ask a question. They can unmute yourself, they can type in the chat box.
Yeah. Hello. Yes, Nishad sir.
Hi, Akshay. How are you?
Oh, hi. Oh, great. So how did you manage to play
lot of harmonium performances sensibly. Like
Sensibly means?
Sensibly means like how did you learn the harmonium?
So I not harmonium. I don't play the harmonium. I sing, and along with singing, I play something called a tanpura, which a lot of people.
Okay, I meant that. Yeah, I probably meant that. Yes, sir. Yeah, I meant that.
So the tanpura actually is in the back. Can you see those things in the back? Those are my tanpuras. And basically tanpuras are just string instruments which are used as accompanying instruments for singing. So they're not really solo instruments. You can't really do much with them. They just give you the pitch. So when you start learning Hindustani classical music, the first thing that is done is you're given a tanpura in your hand, and you have to get used to the idea of playing it while singing. So it just sort of happens. It's like, it's like you pick it up along the way. So no real special effort required.
Yeah, and in fact, many have said about a live performance rather.
Yeah, inshallah, someday we shall have live performance.
Yeah.
But Akshay is a musician as well. I hope all of you know he's a fantastic drummer.
Yeah, his YouTube channel has a lot of videos.
Yeah. What have you been up to, Akshay, over the lockdown? Have you made some demos? Have you cut a couple of albums? What have you done?
It's not a demo. I think might be I do it on my own. But when there is no drum set, I have a djembe with me.
Oh, nice. Okay. So where did you learn how to play the djembe?
Like I don't need any formal training to learn djembe, because arts-based therapy has learned me how to play the djembe.
Very nice.
Because you need only two basic elements.
So you picked it up along the way, basically.
Yeah, and also like along with a drum set as well. Like I don't have a drum set as of now. I have a digital one though.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
So how are you all doing? How are you managing your online classes, and how is life treating most of you? Manas is like vigorously shaking his head, not in the right direction. Yeah, it's very challenging in the sense that none of us ever planned for preparing for anything like this ever in our lives, right? Nobody ever thought this is something that is going to completely uproot our lives and completely change the way things happen on the planet. And we've just had to learn on the fly and try and sort of keep fine-tuning things as we go along. Hopefully all of this will sort of settle down to some semblance of altered normalcy, and this becomes a endemic from a pandemic, and then we all get back to some altered version of normalcy in our lives. But till then, it's extremely crucial for us all to keep the hope in some form or shape. And some of the ways to do it is like how Nishad pointed out, to do what is not academic in nature, so to speak. It could also be your interest, could be non-science academic aspects too, and please pursue that freely. But I think it's also extremely important to do something that you feel extremely passionate about. Yeah, something or the other. And that is something that I think a few other students on online today will also sort of vouch for, because that helps keep sanity. And in that sense, Shrutika is also trying to spearhead something that can hopefully help more people get help in this regards. But having said that, it's super crucial for all of you to keep yourselves engaged in activities and shut that TV off. And I don't know, I can't say don't access social media, because I don't know how else you will all survive. You were born with phones in your hands, smartphones in your hands. But surely make sure that you only follow things that kind of are perpetuating positive news. There's no sense in constantly looking at more and more statistics, because finally now it's becoming a number, and it's leading to a phenomenon called psychic numbing, and that makes no sense. I think it's extremely important for us to not lose our sense of empathy in this time. And so it's important to focus on individual stories and not look at lakhs and crores and those kinds of large numbers which lose complete significance beyond a point, right? Our brains can't wrap our heads around it. So yeah, some of you can share what is it that you do other than attending online classes and stuff, it'll be fun to hear. Srirang wants to say something. Yeah, Srirang.
Ma'am, actually, I wanted to ask a question, but I'll also answer your question.
Haji.
So, okay, my question was, I want to ask all the professors here, it may not necessarily be for your field, but what is the you'd say an interesting unanswered question in science?
So each one of us can go one after the other. Again, Nishad, you start this time.
So interesting unanswered question in science, is it?
Yes, sir.
Interesting for me, or are you saying democratically decided?
No,
you
person.
For me. Okay. I mean, I can give you a couple of things that I find interesting at the moment, but your question seems to kind of be like have you seen that movie where everybody's supposed to answer world peace or something like that? There's that movie, right? Yeah. So this sounds like a question that deserves an answer like world peace. But so I'm trying to think of a world peace equivalent answer. No, I think what this may not be a question, but I think it's perhaps an approach which is needed. Fashion show quiz round. That's the one. Yeah. No, this is, I think, more of an approach that is needed. So I think, and I can only speak as a biologist, right? So obviously this is related to biology, but I think one of the problems with the way that biology is being studied at the moment is that we're trying to reduce it to chemistry, and we're trying to reduce it to physics. And the more you reduce it to chemistry and physics, the more your biology seems to be appreciated in today's times. Chemistry, physics, and math, actually, for that matter. But in doing so, I think that what we are doing is that we're missing out on what biology brings, which is essentially the ability to synthesize components of chemistry and physics and lead to phenomena that are greater than just the chemistry and physics, right? I mean, that was what excited naturalists initially. That was what excited the early biologists were biologists because they thought that living organisms are more than just the sum of the parts. So I think that one of the interesting things to start looking at is, of course, you need to know the parts. You can't envisage anything without knowing the parts. But what are the relationships between these parts that make biology biology, and how do we start trying to understand those, is what I think should be the focus of biologists, because the rest you just leave up to the chemists and the physicists, right? Why should biologists be doing chemistry? I mean, let the chemists do chemistry. Let us do biology, And so biology lies in how different parts talk to each other. And I think that is, for me, the most interesting part of biology. I don't know, that's not very specific, but I think it's a general approach rather than a specific question. I'm done. Somebody else can say something useful.
This is a very good question. I always begin my answer that way when I really do not know the answer. I begin by saying that it's a very interesting question. Okay, but this is interesting from yet another point of view, and I think Nishad has already set the stage for what goes on in my mind when I'm trying to frame an answer to that question. Because indeed, you see, all things put together, they don't even, the total is total. I mean, all the parts do not come together, and this is particularly true for the case of brain. I mean, you see the way our thought processes are triggered, or even why a particular thought comes to my mind at a particular moment, or why, or yet another very important question is why. I mean, this we have all done that. I mean, if I ask you to focus on a particular thought, you see, it is only for a seconds. We see it's only seconds that our brain jumps onto something else. Why is it that the new thoughts come? Why is it that we are not able to sustain a thought for a long time? These are all the how do we make a particular decision? I mean, these are all the things. I know they're extremely difficult, but I would really be interested in knowing as to how taking from the plane of how neurons talk to one another, or our existing knowledge, of synapses and all that put together. How do we go to a higher level, and how does really brain go finally to the mind? I mean, these are very difficult questions, but I think this is something where I would really like someone to teach me. I don't really know answers to these questions, but I think I would be very I would look forward to a moment when some sort of enlightenment will come to me on these issues. Sudha, please.
I'll answer Omkar's question after I've kind of dealt with the current one at hand. So for me, already Nishad and Professor Subdar have articulated it to some extent. For me, it's actually 3 questions which I'm super fascinated with, right? I'll say the origins of the universe, origins of life, not to sound like I am this card-carrying astrobiologist and hence I'm fully biased, but the truth is, it is still one of those quintessential questions. How did we come about? How did life come about? We evolved, yeah, that's much later. And origins of cognition, which is what I think to some extent, I mean, to a good extent, what Professor Subedar is interested in, also kind of will answer. And I'm also very interested in understanding, and this is something that Nishad touched upon. I'm very curious about how emergent properties come about, because a lot of what Nishad talked about, interaction between parts, yeah, the parts could be giant parts, small parts, or even molecular parts. Interaction between different parts leads to the formation of new parts which do probably something completely different from the 2 individual parts. So these are sort of understanding the 3 big questions that I'm fascinated with: origins of the universe, origins of life, and origins of cognition. By understanding it from this emergent property perspective is something that I'm super fascinated about. And I know minimally about everything. The little I know most about is origins of life, and that too, it's like super, super small amounts. Yeah, so that is what fascinates me. Shad is smiling, but can I, Subedarji, you were saying something?
No, I'm done. I'm fine. Yeah, go ahead.
I think I'll take one question which Omkar asked, and I think it's an interesting one, right? If you had a chance to change one thing about your past self, undergraduate self especially, what would it be, or wouldn't you want to change anything? If anybody says, I don't want to change anything, they're just bloody lying. Are you kidding me? Of course you want to change so many things about yourself, right? Or certain ways you've approached things. So I will say, I wish I took my life, my academic life a tad more seriously. I've had so much fun in life at undergrad level and PG level. I started taking all of this business serious only in my PhD level, which essentially meant, fine, I got my act together eventually, but the point is the learning curve became super steep because I had to go back and learn fundamental aspects that I kind of glossed over or just somehow managed to wrap my head around in some minimal fashion to be able to get through the exams, right? Vibhu, tu mujhe bol raha hai ya kisko bol raha hai? Yeah, Prakash, I don't know who it was. Anyways, but the point is, I think you would want to take your undergrad just a tad more seriously. Have a lot of fun in life. It's very crucial. Otherwise, you'll go nuts. But I think it's also, I particularly feel if I had an undergrad opportunity like the ones you have at ISET Pune, and if you make the most out of it, you really can chart a course in the future, which will be so much more straightforward and so much more efficient. That's my feeling about this. Yeah. I don't know if others want to add something about what it is that they want to change in their lives, right? Nishad, you want to change something in your life? Nishad was doing something else.
Sorry, no. I was reading the chat.
This is very distracting, man. How do you do that? Suddenly there are like 20 bloody new messages. Okay.
It's okay, Sudha. You don't have to be on top of everything. It's all right.
Unbelievable. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Hello. Hi, Nishad.
Hi, Shreya.
Yeah. So, Nishad, I just wanted to ask you, for how long have you been trained in your classical music? And like, did you start like at a very early age, or like just your parents asked you to like start, or did you start and then did you like develop interest and after that you took?
You don't have to be on top of it. So nobody cares about my science. Everybody just wants to know about my music. Okay, so I started learning music formally from my mother when I was, I think, 14. So that's 20 years ago, 21 years ago. And why did I start? Actually, this is a good story to tell, particularly in the current scenario. So until then, my mother, as I said, my mother is a singer, and so she's a music teacher as well. So ghar pe we used to constantly have students. I mean, every weekend, essentially the mornings, we were not allowed into the drawing room because that's where my mother would take her music lessons. So we would be sitting inside and listening, and it was horrible. Like, we hated it. We said ki kya hai yaar, Sunday morning aake sab सारे गमा शुरू हो जाता है, and it just ruins my morning, and I just want to watch TV, and I don't want to listen to this, right? So for the first 10 or 12 years of my life, I think I didn't really take to music at all. I knew that I can sing, obviously, because I was in some basic pitch and things like that. But I was very interested in dramatics and elocution and debates and things like that through my whole school life. Then I reached, I think it was in 11th grade, just after 10th standard, right? So yeah, 11th. And all of a sudden, I switched from the ICSE board to the HSC board, which is the state board in Maharashtra. And for me, that was a huge shock in terms of the way that I was expected to learn. So just the expectations of what I was supposed to do with subjects was a massive shock. And I could not believe that I was being asked to study the way that I was being asked to study, right? And that included things like preparing for medical entrances, where you would solve the same MCQ, 8 times, so that when it appears on the final CET paper, you already know what the answer is. And it's just completely ridiculous. Like, I thought this is just the most unfulfilling experience in my life, and I was an extremely unhappy child. And it was at that time that I think serendipitously or something, I heard somebody singing in my class. So in college they had one of these days, some rose day, some tulip day, I don't know, whatever, some day it was. And basically, everybody would get up and whatever, show whatever talent they had. And I realized that I actually don't have any talent at that point. So this boy gets up and starts singing, and then I'm like, hey, wait, but I can sing too. But I've never done anything about it. So then that day I went home and I told my mother that I want to start learning music. And she said, what is this nonsense? 12 years of your life, this has been going on in the background, and now you're coming and saying this to me. A week you're going to stop, don't waste my time. So I said, look, I'm not wasting your time, just like teach me something. And then it just started to snowball from there. And then I started realizing that the unhappiness that my academics was giving me, I kid you not, it was unhappiness, because I used to go for these coaching classes where we would have 50 students sitting in a room which was air conditioned, and they would have these stupid things about homework, and you had to show your homework, you had to hold it up, and the teacher would say, "Arey, tumne nahi kiya hai." And I was like, what is this? I mean, this is not what I signed up for, And so it was really unhappiness. And so I basically used music as my what is it called? Like my safe space, essentially, right? So the stimulation that academics should have given me, the music started to give me. And then I realized over time that there was just so much there. I think the more you engage with any discipline or any art form or any subject, really, the more you engage with it, the more the subject gives you back, right? Unless you engage with it, you're not going to get anything from it. So the more I kept doing it, I just kind of, got involved with it. And I think it's what I turn to now also. I mean, it's become it's been 20 odd years now, right, of singing every day. So basically I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth. The first thing I'm thinking of is chai banao and gaane baitho. So I still do it. I get up every morning and I sing, and it's just become a part of my day, which is how it should be, by the way. I think it should not, the other activity in your life, whatever it is, must not feel like you're going out of your way and doing something, because that means it's not yet become part of your being, right? It has to become part of your being. Unless it becomes part of your being, you're not going to get anything from it. It's an effort. But initially you have to put in that effort, right? Nothing starts off as being, nothing starts off as being such an important part of your life that you can't do without it. You have to give for it to start giving you stuff back. Yeah, so that's my 2-bit on my musical training.
So a question in continuation to that, how did you manage to keep it going during your undergrad and your PhD? Because like most of us like you know, they are interested in some or the other thing, but they are like, you know, when a competition comes up, they practice hard for it, and when the competition is over, they're like, chodo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is a very good point. This is a very good point. And you know, my mother still teaches music, and so a lot of her students will say, "अरे मेरा 10th standard है, अभी मैं बंद कर रहा हूँ, या मेरा 12th standard है, मैं बंद कर रहा हूँ." And that to me makes zero sense, because 10th standard is not the end of your life. 12th standard is not the end of your life. Nothing is the end of your life, right? Your life has to continue, and your life is not one thing. Your life is not, you know, your life is multidimensional, and it should be multidimensional, because otherwise, you know, you're just going to become a robot. I mean, so for me, thankfully my parents understood this, and they realized that if they stop me from doing these things during the, you know, those crucial years, 12th standard, etc., that I will just be insanely unhappy, and I will basically not study, and I will fail. So they let me do it. And you know, as I said, there's always, see, everybody comes up with a priority list, right, in your life, and you must have a priority list in your life, that these are the activities that I prioritize. This is what I have to do, otherwise my day will feel incomplete. For some of you that could be, you know, going and playing football. Some of you that could be painting. Some of you that could be reading. For some of you that, you know, anything it could be. And you have to train yourself in some way to realize what it is that you find fulfilling, and then it happens on its own. Like, you know, I remember, I mean, just an anecdote since you brought this up. So when I joined IISc for my master's and PhD, for my integrated PhD, we initially had shared rooms. So I was sharing my room with an engineering student who didn't care a rat's ass about classical music, but he was a really sweet guy. I mean, he was an incredibly sweet guy, because what he said was that, okay, you want to practice, right? So I play table tennis in the evening for 1 hour. When I go to play table tennis, I'll send you a message, so you can have the room to yourself for an hour. And I thought that was fantastic, right? So if you want to do it bad enough, usually you find some ways of, you know, getting these things done. हो जाता है, हो जाता है. In fact, I remember before my board exams, I was sitting and singing. I think I attended a concert. No, not before board exams. Before my IISc entrance exam. So we used to have these entrance exams for integrated PhD, and I had to go to IIT Bombay to write that exam. And that exam was at 2 in the afternoon or something. That morning at Shanmukhananda Hall in Bombay, Kishori Amonkar was giving a concert. And I said, there is no way I am missing this concert, because she's like God for me. Okay. So I went and attended that concert. I reached 10 minutes late for my entrance exam at IIT, which is all the way across town. But I knew I had to do it. There was no option. I said, Jana to hai. Karenge, dekhenge. Ram bharosa. So, ho jata hai. Some things you have to compromise, some things you just do.
That was a great
Takeaways: attend concerts before exams. Sure, if it helps you, go for it, man.
I'd like to take Swayam Prakash Singh's question. But before that, I need to understand the question. What do you mean rock confidence?
So there's this way you handle yourself that feels like you're like super confident in yourself, and also you took the last lab session we had before we came home. So I really liked how you handled yourself, and I'm very impressed by that. So I want to like have some tips, maybe. I don't know.
Man, I'm extremely touched. I don't turn pink, but inside, I'm becoming all pink and all. Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So I think a lot of this has to do with, one, intrinsic personality to some extent, and two, very importantly, how I was allowed to be who I am by my folks. And this is something that is completely non-trivial, right? I don't think it happens naturally in everybody's lives. Again, my folks are not the perfect folks on the planet, but it was extremely important for them to let me be, which is why it still continues to exude from me the way it does, I guess, because they didn't say, of course, I don't know how many of you are Tamilians out here. I've been, as a child, I've been told by many people I was an Adhika Prasangi. There's a Sanskrit translation to it, Atika Prasanga, like too much. Like, yeah, you know, some Tamil people are laughing here. Yeah. So I was always called an Adhika Prasangi, and it's okay, relatable. Yeah, so it's really okay. Having said that, it's okay to continue to be who you are, and hope that the immediate family and friends that you interact with and that you deal with continue to support you for who you are, and not put you down, or not say this is not the right thing for a girl to do. I mean, this is one very important thing that both my parents did. There was nothing that I did that my brother didn't do and vice versa. Yeah, there was nothing like लड़की को ये करना चाहिए, लड़के को वो करना चाहिए. ऐसा कभी नहीं था. Did they grow up in those kinds of families? Actually not. They come from a very lower middle class background. I come from a very middle class background. But I think a lot of this was decision making on my parents' part, particularly on my mother's part, to say, you know, I will let my daughter be an independent person. I will let my daughter make a life for herself, and nobody will dictate what she will do in her life. And this decision making on my mother's part, which I didn't appreciate early on, has gone a very long way in allowing me to be who I am, which is a very badass person. And I'm told a lot of people fear me. A little bit of healthy fear in everyone towards you is a good idea. It's a very good idea. So it's fine. Initially, I was like, no, I'm not fearsome. People should just like me for who I am. I'm so likable. But then I realized, little bit of fear is okay, completely okay. So yeah, I'll go. I'll wear this with a badge of honor, the badass prof. No, I need to get a T-shirt with that done, with that written on it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Totally, we should gift you that, I think.
I'm very happy. Yeah, you guys design it. I'll totally wear it. So Professor Subedar, you want to say something? There was this thing, a very important question that Omkar, I think, asked, right? If there's anything about you that you would like to change, what would it be?
I would like to change. Well, my wife is not around, so I can tell you. Okay. No. Okay. There are lots of things I would like to change actually, but yeah. Some of the things I see when I was struggling to be a science person. Now I feel I did lots of things which where I wasted my time. I mean, I was designing experiments, and now I knew, and I was wasting my time and money and my own money. There were no grants or projects those days, and I was passionate about them. And when I look back on them, I realized that they were so idiotic in design. And I wonder as to why I did them. I mean, all I can say that, well, I learned from mistakes, but how many mistakes do you commit before you learn something? I mean, so those experiments, I think I should have done better in designing those experiments. But eventually I learned, or the experiences taught me. But then eventually I started doing better. But I think in my first 10 years of my research career, I really done lots of things. I mean, lots of experiments, which, I mean, for example, there is, I'll tell you, I used to work on fish. And in fish, the adrenals are not compact. It's a bunch of cells which is just distributed. And I came up with an amazing idea where I could inject a needle right in the place where the cells was, and give a corrosive substance like some oxalic acid or something, I don't even remember now, so that I would selectively destroy those cells and do some earth-shaking event in endocrines. Well, all my fish died and nothing ever worked. Okay. So if I had an opportunity, I would have done much better. I mean, if I would rather not waste that time. But then it's okay.
That's a good thought. No, maybe the choice of oxalic acid and the concentration of oxalic acid might have been more the issue than your experimental thought itself. I think the idea was very cool.
In hindsight, no, it was a rotten idea. I shouldn't have done it. It is toxic. I mean, it goes elsewhere. I even wasted time in trying different doses. You know,
try different doses.
Just there's no. I wasted a lot of time. I mean, there is. I mean, I mean, if the question is, I should have done something differently. Well, that's what I should have done differently.
Another very interesting question for all of us, I think. Any special or hidden talents of which you generally, that you do not share generally with other people with, like any sports you play? Sports is not the most hidden of all talents, but yeah. Professor Zubeda, you start.
Sports? What is sports? I'm one thing that is very good about me is, one thing that is very about me is that I have no talents, neither for music, nor for art, nor for, but one very good thing about me is that I appreciate. I mean, yeah.
Aficionado, and that's a talent.
I'm sure people like Nishad would go nowhere without people like me.
Absolutely.
They are there because. But and then I'm a great fan of English literature, English poetry. I like painting. I like outgoing. I mean, anything where which is an enriching, what we call an enriching experience in life. I very much like it. I like to hear to great lectures, the scientific talks, the TED talks. I mean, it is, and most important, I'm very fond of English literature and English poetry, and also Urdu poetry, Hindi poetry. So I really enjoy the essence of art in whatever form it comes. Right, old music, old film music. Yeah,
and I
go ahead.
think it's important to correct yourself. This is a talent. I'm sorry, not many have this talent to be able to appreciate so many diverse things in life. So don't underplay that. In my opinion, you're underplaying it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's very important talent, and I have that talent too. So you can't take it away from me by saying that. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I think one sports. I will say what sports I used to play. I used to play Kho.
Oh, great.
Played tennis. I've even played basketball despite being a giddy.
Okay.
Not a very tall person at all, but I used to play basketball too. And one of my favorite sports is shuttle, badminton.
Oh,
So I've taken to badminton again after I had a bit of what is called rotator cuff syndrome after doing science the incorrect way. Something that I would not do again is do some of the radioactive experiments in the manner that I did. I should have accounted for my height and done it slightly differently, but I didn't do that. And I ended up getting what is called a rotator cuff problem. And it's much better now. So I've taken to playing shuttle again, and it's a lot of fun. It's unfortunately closed now, but it's been great to get back to it. And the other thing that I do, which very few people out here know about, is I dance. I do time pass dance. I used to choreograph in college. So when you guys come back, and I don't know if this October it's going to be possible, but next October, if there is going to be a what is our October Fest called? I was a bloody faculty coordinator and I'm forgetting it.
Wow.
Karma, thank you very much. I'm so sorry. I just need my coffee. Yes. I promise I will get all the faculty to do a special dance for you all. And this is a promise.
Yay!
You're also going to be there, huh? You will at least come stand on the stage and go, but you will very much be there. And Nishad, hello. You do pretty decently, Chumma. So this I will promise today. And hopefully I can stick to it. If not, at the very minimum, 2-3 of us will come and do some tapuri stuff and go. Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, that is something that many of you probably don't know. Some have seen here because we did a flash mob for Shashi. Yeah. Amrita says, please live stream it for those who will graduate this year. Sure, Amrita. Yeah, and there was another interesting, science-related question, and this comes from a very young person in the audience, which is Saransh Agarwal. He hasn't come to campus ever. He's a first-year student. He says, we have not come to campus and soon we will have to choose some electives. Any advice on how to decide on them? And one specific question for me would be to choose a heavy math course, which is useful in the future, or choose a practical course in chemistry, because I haven't done any experiments in the coaching years. So, Nishad Subedarji, you want to add something? How do you select electives?
Sorry, what's the question? How do you select electives? I don't know.
I think one of the things to be doing is to talk to immediate seniors, no? Who are the ones who really have done it, and the ones who are in the second and third years. And Shrutika maybe can mobilize some of these interested seniors.
Actually, last semester for the current second years, we or some of us organized a meeting like this. They met their immediate second and third years. They met fourth and fifth years and talked to them. So maybe if it can become an annual feature, that would be nice.
That would be fantastic, Amrita. I think maybe the science club itself can facilitate it, and saying something.
Yeah, if you are confused as to what to read, well, read Animal Physiology.
But I just want to say one thing. I think that overthinking this also is a very bad idea, because there is of course a practical aspect to selecting courses that you're going to take. Like, so for example, if you're looking to major in math, you have to take a math course, right? You can't say, I'm not going to take a single math course, but I'm going to major in math. That's not going to happen. But I think that there needs to be some, so I mean, you guys are not children anymore. You've studied for whatever, 12, 15 years of your life. So go with your gut. Yeah. I mean, if you feel that a subject is interesting and, if you can take the course, just take it. Until you take it, you won't know if it's interesting or not. And different people take these kinds of decisions differently, so it's all very nice to talk to your seniors, and you must talk to your seniors, but you have to, at some point, you have to decide that this is what I'm finding it. And people take courses for all sorts of reasons, and all those reasons are okay. Like, I remember taking courses because this course has a reputation of getting an easy grade. A particular course has a professor who I'm fascinated by. I don't give a rat's ass about the subject, but the professor is really cool, so I want to take that course. All my friends are taking this course, so I will take the course. All my friends are taking this course, so I will not take the course. This whole gamut of things, and these are all not academic. I mean, and not so. Don't get so stuck with these practical considerations. They are important, but you can't base decisions just on that. Just go with your gut. ये लग रहा है ना, लेना है, ले लो. क्या फर्क पड़ेगा? एक कोर्स ज़्यादा ले लिया. It's okay.
And question in continuation is from Krish, and I'll take this, Krish, because there is one aspect. I don't know. Which year are you from? You're a fresher. So one very important feature of our BSMS program, and since you bring up biology as a way to ask your question, which is how do I decide what aspect of biology do I like a lot, right? One very important aspect of our program is what is called lab theory courses. Lab theory courses start from the third year formally, right? And informally, you can sort of unofficially align yourself with any lab at any point in time. All you need to do is walk up, for example, to me and come and say, hey, Sudha, astrobiology seems absolutely fascinating. Can you give me some pointers about how it is that I can learn more about it, so on and so forth. And then we can start having conversations about what literature you can read to understand this better, both not very heavy scientific literature. Initially, you need to start off a little easy, right? So this is true for everybody. You can walk up to Nishad, say, I love microbiology. I want to learn more about antibiotic resistance. So how do I go about it, right? So you basically you can start off informally right from your first year, but formally, you actually have fourth semester, fifth semester, summer in between, 1, 2, 3, 4, summer. Let's start with pre-summer of your third year, right? Summer, third semester, fourth semester, another summer, fifth semester, sixth semester, another, that summer is gone. Roughly, you have these many different periods of your stay in IISER Pune where you can associate yourself with various labs. I'm a person who has very diverse interests, and this is something that I told one of your super seniors, and her name is Harini. She came with loving a lot of different things. She liked cancer, she liked astrobiology, neurobiology. She wanted to do everything. So basically, one of the things I told her is I would very systematically make use of this lab theory component of the coursework to actually spend time, which is about 4 to 5 hours a week of committed time in the lab with whom you're registered. Get a flavor of how is it that they ask questions, how is it that they come up with hypotheses, main hypotheses, alternate hypotheses, what are the kind of research tools do they use to answer these questions. And it can be an experimental lab, a theoretical lab, it doesn't matter. And if your interests lie across 2 areas, say biology and physics, like in the case of Srirang, I would actually narrow it down to some other more slightly I want see there is, again, in physics there's a whole bunch of things, right? You have astronomy, you have physical whatever, physical chemistry comes under physics too. So you have multiple different things. So you narrow it down a little more and then select a few labs in IISER Pune with whom you can associate yourself with and alternate your semesters. एक बार बायोलॉजी का लैब, एक बार फिजिक्स के लैब में, एक बार बायोलॉजी के लैब में, एक बार फिजिक्स के लैब में, and then get a flavor of how all of these things happen. And before you know, even after your first few lab theory courses, you very quickly begin to understand what are the things that might excite you. And by the end of your 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth year, second semesters, you will have a clear notion of where it is that you want to do in which area would you want to do your 5th year thesis in. So I feel like if you make use of this particular option systematically, Krish, you will eventually really figure out what it is that interests you in biology and can kind of, you should start here. I'm sorry, there are a few undergrad students, and hats off to them. They exactly know what they want to do and they come with this notion, right? Mere ko ye karna hai. Fine, that's completely fine. Maybe their exposure has been different till 12th grade and they know things which I never had any freaking clue till 12th grade, right? And most of you are probably where I was, liking so many different things, and it's completely fine. You take advantage of the structure that is offered formally in our coursework, and informally there are other winters where you can do reading projects, and first year winter, first year summer, you can still be associated with some labs, start reading, and you can really make use of this undergrad program to the best of your abilities to help you figure out what it is that you want to do going forward after these 5 years. Yeah, I think I said that. Anything that Nishad and Professor Subhida want to add? Professor, no, he said Chan. Thank you. Very good. Thanks a lot. Sudipta Sarkar, you're showing your face, right? You're the same Sudipta, right? Hi. It's been my general observation that freshers have been extremely worried about ICER's environment and structure, or the lack of it also, and some have not been able to get out of the competitive exam mode. Is it about getting the highest CGPA? Is that what you're referring to, Sudipta?
Both the highest CGPA and being able to do everything with the utmost precision and getting to know everything, what is it and everything. I don't know.
Yeah. So
some people have come to me with all those kinds of, how can I complete all this and know everything about this? I was like, just wait a minute and just look into it.
Yeah, I agree. Some of my batchmates are like worried about postdoc traps and all. Like,
what?
Yeah, I heard one saying that, like,
it wouldn't be a worry, it would be a curiosity.
So this is worrisome to me, right? This is where I think a little bit of being Sudha helps, going with the flow. You don't start planning for your postdoc when you're not even done with this 5 plus another 5-6 years that you're supposed to complete before you even get there, Baba. And if you start thinking about that, now you will be a happy person. You will please be ultra careful. Can you hear me? My internet went unstable. Yeah, you could hear me. Okay. So I think what I will say is, I don't know about every area of every department in the institute, but for biology, I can say this much, and most of us feel pretty strongly about it. And Professor Subhadar and Nishad can add too. We are not questioning you, or we are not during examination. Our goal is to the maximum possible extent, not question you for your rote capacity. Yeah, that is back in the days. Batti maro jaake uglo paper pe and marks le lo. That is not the goal at all. The idea is to try and see if you are understanding the fundamental concepts. So the question can be something completely different from what you heard during the coursework, but that shouldn't intimidate you, because if you have understood the fundamentals clearly, the question is all about how you're applying that understanding to answering the question. And sometimes there might not be one clear way of answering that question. Sometimes there might be multiple ways. It depends on the question, right? So I feel like, please enjoy. This is a very important part of your life. Very important duration. It's never going to come back. The older you grow, the shittier life becomes, right? So you need to learn to have fun. Nishad will agree with me, actually. Subhadarji is saying something. You need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
I would like to a very small point to what Sudha said is extremely important. I would just like to add that just science is beautiful. That's all. Science is beautiful. I mean, if you just need to tune yourself to appreciate it. Okay, so, and once you do it, then rest everything becomes easy. I mean, if you ask me why I read science, because it's beautiful, it's amazing, I mean, it's so, it catches you, it catches you like a thriller, I mean, you see, when I'm reading a good paper, I'm in as much in it as much I'm in a say James Bond film. So there's so much excitement. in the paper that you need to get it. I mean, and once you start getting it, you realize that science is fun. I mean, you do it for fun. You're not doing for a degree. Just do it for fun. A degree is a byproduct. Postdoctoral position is a byproduct. Everything is a byproduct. Science is fun. Science is beautiful. Just do it. That's what I would like to say.
So actually, I agree with Subedar, but I also want to say this. If after your experience in ICER, you don't think that science is fun, please don't do a PhD.
Yeah.
Something else.
Yeah.
Because just because Subedar thinks it's fun, just because I think it's fun, you don't have to think it's fun.
Yes.
Right? If you think it's not fun, don't continue in science. Find something that is fun, but don't force yourself to do things that you don't want to do. You'll just be a very unhappy person, and you'll be very bad at what you're doing. So there's really no point like that. So use your time at ICER to see if you are made for this kind of a lifestyle. If not, there's nothing wrong with it. Just do whatever you want to do. Right? Don't stress. Harsh has his hand up or something.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for taking the question. Hello, I'm a fresher. We just finished our first semester and we just started the second semester last week. And few of us have been thinking or considering taking up reading projects. It was all kicked off by the ISA Kolkata internships and stuff, and we realized that that's not going to be possible. So we thought that, okay, maybe a reading project might be attainable. So what would your advice be, all the professors present here, advice be on reading projects? Like, should we do it while we also have a semester going on? Or will it be too heavy on us, or is it worth it at all? So yeah, that's the question.
So I let me first react to that question and then answer it. Okay. So I think the first thing you want to do, Harsh, is stop thinking of yourself as us. Okay, there is no us. There are 220 students in your batch or whatever, 250 students. Each person is a different person. Okay, and each person needs to take this call for himself, herself, themselves. Okay, so that's the first thing. So the first mentality you have to get out of is stop asking questions for your batch or your group of people. Start asking questions for yourself, because your answers that are applicable to you are not applicable to anybody else except you. Okay. Now, as far as reading projects are concerned, they are fantastic. You must do them if you feel that if you need to do them, do them. Okay. If it becomes too heavy, quit. But don't decide before you have taken the project that you can't do it. That way you will essentially never do anything. So if you feel that there is the bandwidth to do more, just do it. Don't think about it. And you decide to do it for yourself. Just because you're doing it, don't have other people, following in your footsteps. Nobody's following any footsteps. So since you brought this question up, I'm guessing you have the urge to do it, right? Otherwise you wouldn't have asked this question. So my advice is just go ahead and do it. Don't think about it so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
The others can respond. My answer was rather reactionary.
I completely concur with Nishad. One size will never fit everyone, and everybody might not be equally interested in doing this kind of stuff. But for those of you who are interested, for most part, all our web pages tell you something about what we do. If not, you can use Google Scholar and try and understand a little more about the titles of the papers that we publish, and maybe you'll not understand crap from that, but it'll give you some sense. If you click on that, it takes you further to the site itself, and then you can read the abstract, which will tell you a little more about what it is that our work might entail a little bit in terms of at least broader interests. And you can make lists. If you're interested, like Srirang was in both biology and in physics, you can systematically make lists of the top, 5-10 faculty in both these areas that you want to hit up, because not everybody is going to respond. Yeah, different people are in different zones and in different states of mind, and most of us are generally good about responding. Most of us, even I am sometimes, I miss mails in the crazy barrage of mails that's happening these days. So there are various factors. So have some sort of internal ranking according to your own preference. Hit up people slowly, one after the other, or a few of them simultaneously, and see who responds and take it from there. And you will very quickly realize that you can do something or the other, and it's very, very straightforward. A related question pertains to something that Shruti started asking, and then we should probably touch upon it. Shruti, I think, is a third-year student, and she says we have lost our opportunity to do any summer or semester project thus far, and it becomes scary. I understand, Shruti. I completely, I can understand where your fear is coming from, and I think in this particular regards, I will have to say something that is very important for all of us, particularly for all of you youngsters. Recalibrate your expectations. We are systematically at the level of our professors, at the level of being the faculty, are recalibrating our expectations of you, given that this bloody year has been a washout. And we're probably looking at another 4-5 months of our lives being topsy-turvy, right? So it's okay to still, even though it is a little scary, you're still, please understand, you're familiarizing yourself with the theoretical aspects of a given area of your interest. So even if you've never run a gel independently, that is something that you can learn once you come back. And it is important, though, for me to know that you have not just whiled away your time, but you have tried to use it in some form of sort of systematic way to try and understand how a gel works. And so if Shruti approaches me, Harini approaches me, and multiple of you approach me, and during the conversation, I get a sense that somebody has put in more effort and is coming from a more informed place. And given that space is going to be limiting in labs, and you need to understand that that's a reality check. We are all going to be as understanding as possible, but then there is just so much we can do at a practical level. So then I will start doing my internal ranking of who it is that I want to have in my lab. So again, one of the recalibrations that we profs have to do, and this is something that we have to bring up during one of the faculty meetings, at least in biology, is many of you haven't run a gel independently. So can we make that happen for a whole group of you in sort of batches? Get you to at least, loading even one well will give you some sense, right? Of course, we'll never be able to look at your numbers, Baba. It's 200 and odd plus. So to be able to do anything at that personalized level is going to be challenging. So out of you 220, 25% like biology karke pakad lo. That is also a huge number. So then we probably can spread you across all the labs. Every lab doesn't run gels. That is the other thing, right? Every lab doesn't run gels. So maybe we can try and come up with something more well thought through. And maybe we can do a module over one of the summers when you're back here to at least get you up to speed with some of the fundamental analytical techniques. That's a possibility. And this is something that even Uya Srinila is bringing up. There are plans for how to get you up to speed to some extent. It is never going to be something where we can kind of make up for all the lost time, but please be assured that it'll all not be hopeless. You know what I mean? We all are planning for things. We're all planning for contingencies. And when you come back, you will have things to do, which will help you gain confidence in some of the physical, physical experimental work that you have to do. Yeah. And Harini had an idea, and maybe somebody else can talk about this. But
thank you so much for your response. So I had this idea where, I was thinking if we could get a number of how many students are actually interested in, suppose, biology. So every lab could have a batch of, say, 20, 25 students for a month. And we could sign up for labs in rotations apart from our normal semester projects going on in the background, which will give us more exposure to all the kind of work which is going on. Because the opportunities before our 5th year starting is really like this 2 semester projects remaining. So if apart from that, if something could be done, even informally would be fine, but that becomes more chaotic. So I was thinking if the professors themselves could set this up, it would be really great.
Shruti, just mail these ideas to us, no? And then I will run it formally by colleagues here, and we'll try and come up with.
Sure.
I can surely speak for biology. I will pass on some of these things even to some of my interested chemistry colleagues, and then they can also see what they can do.
Yeah, thank you.
But can I just ask Shruti? So can I ask you a sort of follow up to your comment?
Sure,
I don't know if this is brought up by you or Harini really, but so what is it that you expect to gain from these 1 month exposures that you suggest?
So this is basically just experience of how that particular lab actually functions, or how that kind of work is undertaken, because not every lab does everything. And since I haven't at all done anything in my life so far in a lab, So I really don't know how things work there. So
you want to, so you don't mean learning techniques, but you mean being able to interact with the.
It does mean learning techniques, because every lab has different techniques which they use for a majority of time. That's true. But that being in the background.
Hang on, my doorbell has rung. I need to go.
Sure. No problem.
You basically want a version of a lab theory program, but in a slightly more structured manner and in a time-specific manner, where more number of students at any point in time will sort of hang around, say, in either Nishad's lab or my lab, and try and understand how it works. Is that a fair way of paraphrasing what you said?
Yes, definitely.
So I just wanted to say that I don't think you should stress about techniques at all. Okay, there is zero relevance in learning a technique without understanding the context in which it is being used. So do not think that you have missed out on any technical training at all. You have not missed out on any technical training. Okay, you guys are all very smart. You'll pick these things up in a couple of weeks' time. Don't stress about that. What you should stress about is because you spend a 5th year project in a particular laboratory, you have to kind of be comfortable with the way that the laboratory works in terms of, what are the dynamics of the laboratory and what are the dynamics of your mentor and you. You have an interaction with your mentor. That is something that you have definitely missed out on. So I don't know that you should stress about this technique business at all. Don't stress about it one bit. It's fine. You will pick up whatever you need to pick up for your 5th year. But I do think that you have missed out on the possibility of interacting with faculty and interacting with PhD students who you will eventually perhaps work with. So maybe we need to think of a way in which we can get that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. Hey, if this is of
I had something to add to
sorry, go ahead.
Shruti's comment. What she suggests is basically like a modified version of the kind of bio labs that we used to have in 1st and 2nd years. Isn't that?
Yeah, the smaller scale, sure. And more lab specific, not general demonstrations.
Yeah, and in batches.
No, even then, if the goal is to just learn some technique, then it would just be like
that's not the goal, as Nishad was pointing out. It's more about how that particular lab is inclined and how the people are inclined to do what they are doing and to know what they are doing.
Yeah, and why they ask the questions they do. How do they think about those questions? Okay. Essentially, you're asking for an abridged lab theory course happen in a certain manner where, other than Shruti, if there are 10 others who are interested in Nishad's lab, how can we facilitate this? And I completely concur with Nishad when he says that you really haven't lost out on much by not having learning techniques and stuff. If this is of any solace to any of you out here, maybe it's really not to sort of mind what many of you do while you're doing your coursework in BSMS here. I never held a test tube till my PhD. I went through coursework in BSc and MSc where you did not have a prerequisite of a thesis. BSc में नहीं था, MSc में नहीं था, BSc में labs थे. तो labs में जो करना था, earthworm को काटा, frog को काटा, cockroach को काटा, वो सब किया मैंने. That and all I did those kinds of basic microbiology stuff and all, but no real research experience. Labs are very different from research experience, right? So this shouldn't, just because you didn't do it now, I understand that you are growing up in very different circumstances, and science at undergrad level is done very differently, but you should really know that maybe there is a bit of a steeper learning curve during your master's program or during your master's thesis or during your PhD thesis, but you will get up to speed. Like Nishad said, you all are very smart, and it's a matter of just putting in extra hours and figuring this out. Yeah. And don't get callous and don't become like, Sudha did it during a PhD, so I'll also do it during my PhD. Na, वैसा उतना भी attitude नको. I think it's very important to at least try and understand in what context is Nishad asking the questions that he's interested in. If you want to ever be associated with this lab, or if you ever want to be associated with my lab, you hit us up early on and say, hey, can you give us some kind of basic sort of reading material that will allow us to understand why it is that you're even doing what you're doing. उतना interest दिखाना चाहिए and उतना थोड़ा पढ़ के आके बात करना चाहिए. Otherwise, there is no way you can stand out in 268 students. It becomes very difficult. So you need to remember that you put a little bit of effort, and then we will help you sculpt, and we will help try and make you understand how you put in the rest of the effort to eventually do a good master's thesis. So beyond a point, don't overstress. It'll work out. Like I said, this 1 year, nobody saw it coming. It's a fucking freight train which came onto us from nowhere and has derailed our lives, but we'll get back our lives together soon enough. Yeah, just hang in there.
So I have put up a comment in there. This is like for everybody, I guess, all the props here. So would it even be possible to set up experiments at home if they are not very complicated? And it's not all the fancy equipment that you would need, things that you can muster up around you, and probably does not require a lot of money.
Can you say that again, Harini? I didn't catch what you said.
Set up experiments at home, which don't require too many equipments and those kinds of
Set
things.
up experiments at home.
Yes,
Like,
yes. Like a home lab kind of setup.
Subedarji will say yes. Yeah. All you have to do is go kill a frog, or a toad, or an earthworm, and you can cut it open. Correct? No.
Can cut open a fish, you can say. Frog is difficult. These days, frog, the restrictions are there.
Sorry. You should. Sorry, I cut a frog. It was we did that drum experiment.
Yeah.
Physiology, where you actually heartbeat ko monitor karte hai na. So
but now you need approval for that. So
I did it in my master's lab. Achha. So please listen to the animals listen to the model systems that he approves, and then maybe you can do some fun stuff at home. Because all you'll need is
you can still think of animal behavior. I mean, if you can.
Oh yeah. Okay. There you don't have to kill anything, no?
Right. Something like that.
Yeah, all relevant points, and totally agreed to everything that you have said. But still, what makes me worry is, again, Nishad sir would say that speak for yourself and not for your friends. But I still see my friends in physics department worrying so much more. And I know it's because of the nature of the subject, and like I understand all that, and we kind of feel reassured because of all the awesome people here in bio department. But still,
it's not nature of the subject. Don't blame the subject.
It's not.
Okay? No subject asks you to stress out. Okay, let's not blame
that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So it's something else. We will not talk about that on YouTube. But okay, go on.
But that's what they like kind of worry so much, and then I don't know. It's still it kind of feels their life seem very hard in physics department. I don't want to say this, but it's there. It's there. And I feel that something should be. मतलब कुछ तो अच्छा होना चाहिए, पता नहीं. Yeah. So we are still talking about a lot of bio stuff here, so we can still talk about this problems and solutions. But yes, that factor is there, like the CGPA thing, or even worrying about marks or whatever, all the things. That's even more there, I feel. And I don't know if I'm putting it right, but it's actually there.
No, look, I think there's only one way to think about this, right? These are extraordinary circumstances. So to expect that you're going to do everything that normally would have been done by your seniors, etc., is impossible. If you set that expectation up for yourself, or if others set that expectation up for you, you're going to be unhappy. And it's not going to happen because these are extraordinary circumstances. So you cannot expect that you will get all the lab experience that your seniors got. You will get all the kaise karoge yaar? It's not possible, right? So don't set that expectation for yourself. It's unreasonable, right? It's unreasonable for me to expect that the way I teach a course in a live class one-on-one session, I can't teach a course like that in an online session. It's not possible. And if I beat myself up saying ki arey wo jo hota tha wo to hua hi nahi, then I mean that's such an unreasonable thing for me to be doing, right? I mean, so you have to basically just whatever circumstances are available to you, you do the best that you can and don't expect that things are going to be the way they were. The moment you start expecting that, it's a recipe for disaster. You're just going to beat yourself down, and it's going to just keep getting worse and worse, because you can never match up um, to this, right? So that's my only I mean, I don't know if it helps, but that's how it is. So you have to recalibrate, right? Like Sudha said earlier, just you must recalibrate. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for a very, very steep fall, and it's not going to be pretty.
So I have a follow-up question. Um, so if you were in our position in this circumstance, what do you think
What
you would have
do?
done?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So unfortunately for you, you don't have the wisdom of years, which
You do.
which we have to various extents, right? So anything I say will be coming not from, I mean, it's coming up, from 15 years after having done an undergrad. So it's very unfair for me to say anything really. But I think what you should, and this is something that I spoke to people in my lab the other day about. And this is something that applies not only to you, but it also applies to me, by the way. And I take it very seriously, which is that things are very unreliable right now, right? So while you have the health and the circumstance in your favor, do what needs to be done, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen next week. You don't know what your situation is going to be like. So whatever is achievable right now, do it right now. Do not postpone it for tomorrow. Do not say ye kal karunga. Do not say ye next week karunga, because next week ka bharosa nahi hai. Any number of things could happen which will take you away from being able. So for example, if you're missing lectures and saying that I'm going to attend these lectures all before my end sem exam, and if you have the opportunity to listen to these lectures, please listen to them live, right? If you have the opportunity to read something today, read it today. Don't postpone it till tomorrow, because you don't know whether you're going to be in a position tomorrow to read it or not, right? So while you have health and circumstance in your favor, just capitalize on your time. That's all you can do, really.
There's a question for Professor Subedar and me. The ones who don't have much talent, as the way Subedar put it, Professor Subedar put it. What activity comforts you the most in these stressful times, academic or non-academic, like it's music for Nishat sir?
Hey, no, that's actually not true. What comforts me most is human interaction right now. I think that's what we're all
missing.
So what comforts you otherwise, Professor Subedar, other than human interactions? All that stuff that you talked about, the poetry. And...
For me, it's music. Yeah, it's music. Yeah, and then reading English literature. Those writers whom I always wanted to read and couldn't make it. Now is the time to make it. So in a way, this is an opportunity for me. Yeah. So this is the opportunity. I mean, there are lots of authors I always wanted to do, and now I go through them, and I think this is a great way to spend these almost dark days we are living through. And I just wanted to.
Could you recommend a few of books?
Yeah.
Recommend few of the books.
Recommend some of the books.
Those that you like.
Okay. One of my favorite has been Somerset Maugham. These days people don't know much about him, but I always liked him. And yeah. And then there are many others, like Chaucer is there, and right from Pride and Prejudice and Jane Austen, and so many of them are there. I mean, right from Sherlock Holmes, I like Sherlock Holmes. So just enjoy the beauty of the language, beauty of the situation that creates, and just go and live in those times. I mean, this is I think this is one of the. What I actually wanted to add on to something which Nishad had said. What Nishad said is that we are going through a difficult time and we need to adjust. Now, what he said we need to adjust is very, very important. And you should, let me tell you, at least when you are at ICER, you know that what you are going to do for next 5 years. Well, let me tell you, the most predictable thing about life is the unpredictability. So this very time that we are having, we see, we never expected it. but it has to come. It has come, and we are all there together, although we are at different stages of life. So I think we should take it as a challenge that this is a training for me to cope up with a situation that comes and stands in front of me unannounced, and I am not prepared for it. But such situations come in everybody's life. They will come in some form or the other, and I would say that you take this as a part of the training to meet such a situation when you need to face it in future. Is that right, Nishad?
I was talking to my mother the other day on the phone, and she was telling me about. So she said exactly what you said right now. That the unpredictability of it is basically what you need to get used to, because if you're going to constantly think that things should go exactly the way that I've planned them, then you're setting yourself up for continuous depression. But my mother said, so she was telling me about the time. So she grew up in Calcutta, and she was telling me about the time that she was in college and the Naxalite movement was active in Calcutta, and she lost an entire year of her BSc because she could not go to college because of violence. So these things are constantly happening. I think what we are now facing is perhaps on a magnitude that is global, and just the number of people who are suffering from it, but these things are going to keep happening. I remember in Bombay during the 90s, when I was in school, we had the riots in Bombay, right? And for about a month we were just sitting at home, and we were too young to understand what was going on. But now when you look back, you see that there was the plague which happened in the 90s in Bombay, and everybody was freaking out about that. So these things are going to keep happening in your life. So if you're going to not adjust to the situation, and I know it's very easy for us to sit in our cushy privileged apartments in cities and say, oh, you must adjust. I realize that it's very rich of us to say that, but you have to find ways to get around these things. Otherwise you're going to just it's just going to spiral out of control for you.
So there are two things I will like to add. One is the question as to what is it that I do, like Professor Subadar does, to keep my sanity. For me, it is music, movies, and reading. Reading, I use various different sort of formats of. I read from books, I read from other digital formats, so on and so forth. But yeah, music and movies. I love world cinema. So as much as I would love to give more time to it, that hasn't been happening. But I try to watch a lot of movies from different parts of the world. And that's something that I've been doing for a while now. And these are the kinds of things that try and keep me sane, though I don't have much time to do them at all because we're catching up with a lot of stuff on the administrative front at work to still keep things running because we have researchers back on campus now. And the other thing is a question from Arsh Chavan. I think Arsh is asking us, why did we decide to work in India? So my question is, why not? And I'm going to, after reacting with that answer, I'm going to also, or with that question, I'm going to say, why is it that I chose to work in India? I lived for almost a decade in the US between my two and a half postdocs. So I thoroughly loved the place. I traveled a lot. I've set foot on about 20 states in that country. And I've also traveled in Europe quite a bit. And I really, really enjoyed traveling, learning about new cultures. And this provided me the opportunity to precisely do that. And at one point in time, I kind of decided that by the time I'm closer to 50, I'll come back to India. Until then, I'm going to work my way east and then stop at various places and do science in various places. And I had a very naive notion about what was possible. And this one time I got stuck for about 65 days in India waiting for my visa to go back to the US. And that is when it hit me that I miss India. I thoroughly enjoyed those 65 days. When I hung out with my folks, I traveled in India. I went and met my relatives whom I hadn't seen for a while. And going to those places allowed me to meander to other nearby places that I've been wanting to check for a while. And then I was like, shit, I miss India a lot more than I'd given it credit for. And coincidentally, science, the way science is being done in India now, things were just around the corner then, where people were thinking a lot about integrating undergraduate education with research. And that is something that I felt very strongly about because I never set of you to decide on, no, actually it helps all of you to decide what it is that you want to do with your lives much earlier than when I learned what I want to do with my life. So I felt very strongly about this, and I thoroughly enjoy teaching and I love doing research. So it all kind of came together, and I was like, I'm ready to come back to India. So I got my visa, I went back to the US, and then I started working towards wanting to come back to India. So that is exactly what happened. And how is it to do science in India? There are challenges, of course. Yeah, at Harvard, I ordered something, I got it the next day. Do I get stuff so readily here in India? Of course not. And here is Professor Subedar, who never, correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Subedar, you've done science for all your life in India, right? You've been
Yes.
in India, yeah.
All my life.
All your life. And he's done science in places where it is absolutely challenging to do science. It's non-trivial where he worked, right? I did my PhD in NII, where still it was one of the top 10 institutes in the country. Nishad went to ISC, still one of the top 10 institutes in the country, right? But Professor Subedar's story was not the same. But I think the least common denominator for all the three of us was this clarity that despite the challenges, we want to do science in India. Because there's a lot of interesting possibilities also that Indian science allows. Of late, not as much. There are other challenges, and I'm not going to get into it. But to be able to pursue my love, which is astrobiology, and in an Indian setting, is still very readily feasible, and it's not probably feasible in many parts of the world. So I feel like if you have a good question, and if you have a coherent hypothesis, and if you have well thought through experiments that you would use to answer these questions, funding agencies, for most part, again, challenges ensue, and particularly in the last 6-7 years, it's been very challenging. But if you have a rigorous question that you want to ask, and if you come up with a good proposal, you will get funded, and then you can do science in India. So there's a lot of scope, there's a lot of excitement, and there's a lot of interesting intellectual wealth in India, all of you, right? Which is very, very exciting to be sort of, it's very interesting to work with you all. So I've always wanted to work in India. I knew I wanted to come back eventually, but I didn't know I would come back as early as I did. So that's only. Anything else, people? Is it really effective to have more UG students joining ICER every year? I think 250 should be the limit. That also we're sort of hitting, I don't know. So these are things beyond our paychecks. All three of us here don't sort of have a say in some of these matters. But having said that, I think when the ICERs were constituted, or when the ICERs were conceptualized, the idea was to be able to have, I want to assure you the faculty to student ratio is still 1:10, because the MHRD, which is now called the Department of Education, doesn't approve of faculty positions if we do not maintain this ratio. Right now, it is slightly more skewed towards 1:, maybe, I don't know, not 10, but higher, but it's still not very bad at all for an institute of, which handles students of undergrad level and so on and so forth, right? I went to undergrad, when I went to undergrad, I was the second batch of microbiology course in that college. We were 71 in our class. How many? 71. The number of profs, if you take the ratio of that college to the number of students, remotely not 1:10. It was much, much, much higher. So it is, I'm not saying we can't improve. Absolutely, we have to improve. And in the last 3 years, we've had a lot of UG intake happen. So we are still waiting for MHRD approvals to actually officially get in more faculty on board to make sure that we try and keep this ratio.
If I can just quickly respond also to that, Swayam, which is about the number of students. So you need to also realize that, okay, so I should say that I have been in two different kinds of situations, right? One is where I'm part of a large class, never as large as 250 actually, but nevertheless a class which is 50-60 students, but there's a teacher who's teaching. The other kind of pedagogical setup, teaching setup that I've been a part of is actually my music lessons, where there is one teacher and one student. Okay, so the ideal case scenario is your one teacher, one student, right? Because then the teacher can essentially, you don't have an option to do anything else except pay attention to what's being said, and individual problems can get corrected. Now, the reason one teacher, one student worked in my music lessons is because it was not an institutional education. It was an informal education, right? In an institutional setup, you will always have this issue of the number of students per teacher being skewed in favor of the students, right? In a country like ours, with how many ISers do we have now, Sudha? We have 10 ISers, 9 ISers.
Less, 8.
8 ISers, right? In a country like India, do the math of 250 times 8, right? And you know, you will see that, you know, when these policies are being made for educating a nation, right? So while I get that a student teacher ratio should ideally be, you know, whatever, 1:2, maybe 1:3 is ideal, perhaps. It's just not possible, right? And so you have to think about all of these things. I agree that, you know, it's all, you know, when you're a student sitting there and not getting attention from a teacher or not getting the kind of feedback that you want, it's frustrating. But remember that that's where these policies are coming from. So, you know, that's how it is. So that's basically what drives these policies, not so much. I mean, of course, you don't want to compromise effectiveness too much, but you know, in a country like India, how do you even gauge effectiveness? How are you going to say that 250 is less effective than 200? What is the metric that you're going to use, right? I mean, so India has a lot of very India-specific problems, and everybody's just trying to find solutions to these. And one of them is to increase the student intake, because you know, you have all of this money that's been public money, right? That has been poured into setting up this infrastructure. So you want to maximize the number of students who get to take advantage of that infrastructure.
Sir?
Yeah, that's all. That's my 2 bit.
Sir? Hello?
Hey, hi, Shudip. Yeah.
Hello, sir. I mean, like following up from your argument, isn't it inherently in the nature of science that we need to have a certain number of students to have an effective class? When it comes to music per se, you need to have that one-on-one conversation of, you know, tuning the whole thing. But in science, I feel having some students around you and the teacher actually, you know, improves the conversation.
Of course.
I don't know if it improves. It certainly changes.
It improves too.
So that's what I said, that I think that you have to figure out what, so you know, for example, if you're learning a craft, right, which by the way, science is not all philosophy, right? There's a craft to science as well. You have to know the craft of doing science, right?
But it's a different kind of craft. Like the scientific approach towards like approaching any problem is very different from any artistry or something like that.
But what I'm saying is that the craft to doing science will help you to make a living out of science. The philosophy of science may or may not help you to make a living out of science, right? And that's the difference. So when you're trying to equip a student with a craft, the more skewed the ratio towards a student, the lesser you can equip individual students, because you simply can't see where individual students are going wrong. You're right about the democratic sort of approach to the philosophy of science, right? Where you argue out an idea, you hear different points of view, you debate different points of view, and so for that you have to have different points of view. So you can't have one-on-one class, right? So I get that point. But so you know, the ISers are not just meant to train scientists, yeah. They are meant to train people in science. So all of you are not expected to become scientists, but you're expected to understand what it means to be doing science. So we need, for example, people who are tomorrow going to set up factories manufacturing plastics, or you know, are going to employ or are going to manage hundreds of people who have nothing to do with science, to be aware of scientific philosophy, to be aware of scientific reasoning. And that's the purpose of the ISers, right? So not to train all of you to become scientists. That is not the purpose of ISers, in my opinion.
So I think I was just going to say, you should say in your opinion, or
in my opinion.
Formally the document actually says to generate human resource. That is, yeah. Having said that, I completely concur with Nishad. The scientific bent of mind, or that is kind of intuitive to many of us on this chat, right? But that's not how people live. But the hope is by the end of these 5 years, that is how you will learn how to live your life using the scientific bent of mind.
Yeah, I mean, for example, all of you must be seeing the news or reading newspapers, right? And every day there's a new development in terms of policy towards the pandemic, right? How many of you have spent time to think about what the scientific basis of those policies are? Right? So, for example, now vaccination is being allowed for 18 years and above, right? Was there a scientific basis to do it now and not 1 year, not 1 month before or 2 months from now? I mean, we must at least be able to have this conversation, right? And for that, you don't necessarily need to know the craft of doing science, but you do need to understand the science. You need to understand the philosophy of the science. So these are two different things. And yeah, I mean, we just do that's why I said it's very hard to gauge what is effective scientific education, right? Because you're trying to, we're not trying to generate, I mean, if we were trying to, if I had to train all of you to do a PhD, I can't do it. You can't train 250 undergraduates to get, into PhD programs and have successful PhDs. It's not possible.
There's a natural predisposition for it.
Yeah.
5 years will allow you to decide what is it that you want to do going forward. It could be any number of different things. And finally, what you're learning is you're developing this toolkit of experiences, which is going to help you in whichever area of whatever it is that you want to pursue, right? This scientifically thinking about any problem has huge advantages. Yeah. And how do you work with peers? You learn how to communicate your science by writing reports, by giving posts, by standing by a poster and explaining the work you do. All of these are essentially building your skill sets in various aspects, which you can take forth and do whatever it is that you want to do. It doesn't have to be academic research at all. It can be any number of different things. People, we're getting close to 1. Unless there are some very pressing sort of things that the science club folks want us to touch upon, we should start winding shop if that's okay.
Need to leave now.
You're leaving?
Yeah.
Oh, High Court order.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks to all the students. Thanks to the science club. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Jessica can't hear you, Jessica. I know you're trying to say something, लेकिन कुछ भी समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. Jessica, कुछ भी समझ में नहीं आया.
Audible now, yes, ma'am.
Very poorly audible. Can you type what you're saying?
Yes.
Shruti is asking something, and I think Nishad should answer this from his perspective, and then I can add to it. How important is it to have foreign ka thappa on your resume in terms of PhD or postdoc at least for a good career in scientific research come academic institutes like ISIS in India? Not in the philosophical terms, but in a from a very really materialistic view.
I think it helps. Unfortunately, I must agree that it helps. In a philosophical sense, it doesn't help at all, in my opinion. But in a very materialistic sort of way, unfortunately, from what I see around me, it helps.
Yeah, that is true. Which is a shame, but that is true. Because everything is not an apples to apples comparison at all.
No, but you must also, Shruti, you must also think of it this way, that there are two strategies to any kind of endeavor. Okay, you can always take a high risk, high reward strategy. Okay, so you take a risk and you go against the grain. The rewards that you get from that are usually massive, but the failure that you get from that is also massive. Right? So if you decide, so for example, I took a decision at some point that I don't want to be educated abroad. I want to continue to practice and do science in India. There were a variety of reasons for it, which are immaterial, right? The point was the decision got taken. So I essentially took a decision knowing that there is a high risk associated with it, right? Does this mean that if you go abroad, you'll make it in science and you'll always get like the exact job that you want? And no, of course not. right? And there's a risk associated with that also. But you're going in a you're following a trajectory that various people have followed. So there are people to turn to when you are stuck, right? There are networks available which have been established by hundreds of people who have done this before you, right? So that's the advantage of taking certain tracks in a very materialistic sort of context. Of course there is an advantage to exposure to other environments, other research cultures, other cultures in general, which is important to build you up as a scientist and as a person. But you have to decide what strategy you're going to adopt in life, and you have to know the um, risks and the benefits of each of them before you decide to do it.
Right, thank you. Yeah, right. I just wanted to know the beaten path. Yeah.
So I had a question. So, like both of you, that these days science is becoming like a lot of like, interdisciplinary fields are coming up, and it's necessary that you need to know all the fields equally. But sometimes it happens that we are not that interested in other fields. Say we are only interested in, say, for example, I'm only interested in biology. So, is it necessary to like, even though I'm not interested, is it necessary to learn all the other fields, or like how is it?
Sudha.
Not talking about teachers and all, but like just the interest part.
So I will go back to, see, I work at the interface of geology, chemistry, and biology. And I'm saying this because I'm going to use this as a way to tell you what could have made me better suited to do what I'm doing now had I done things a little differently. But does that mean it's a total disadvantage? I'm going to answer a few different things by using this example, right? So I work at the interface of geology, chemistry, and biology to answer the questions that we're interested in our lab. Have I ever trained in geology? No. Did I get trained in chemistry? Of course, in my undergrad, right? Did I pursue it after my undergrad? The answer is no, not till I got back to actually doing astrobiology. So I think it is extremely crucial for us to be trained in the fundamental natural sciences. Yeah, for as long as feasible. Surely up to 2 years in your undergrad program, if it allows you, which BSMS program at ISEP Pune does allow you, right? So it provides you with the basic tools of being able to not feel intimidated if you ever have to use any of this, even in the remotest fashion, in a question that you want to work on in the future, particularly if you're going to persist in academia. Yeah. So, like I said, giving up on math came to bite me in my patooties. And I appreciated that only when I went to Harvard. I'm surrounded by people whose training is entrenched in mathematics. And I was the only one who had never done partial differential equations in my life. So I had to kind of relearn a few things and learn, first of all, to stop feeling intimidated. I had to make sure that the Surya Prakash Rao's face never came into my mind to kind of completely boggle my, to bother me again. And then it was a deconstruction of that fear that had to happen first, after which I kind of learned the language that I can use to talk to these people in order to at least communicate to them what it is that I want them to help me with using their theoretical tools. It took a lot of time. Now you could save on that lot of time by not dropping it in your 11th grade, dropping math in your 11th grade, correct? If you went through that 11th and 12th grade math, you at least know differential equations. Yeah. So I feel like there is a trade-off. There's a lot of heavy importance given to interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity and cross-disciplinarity these days, but that is not feasible unless and until you become a master at something. You cannot be jack of all trades and just survive and then do something very, very superficial, right? It's never going to be satisfying. So there needs to be a focus on learning something at a much greater depth. But at the same time, if for the first 2 years of your BSMS program, you have the opportunity to learn about several different areas of natural sciences, I still strongly will encourage that you do that and then fine tune further. You still have 2 full more years to fine tune, right? Again, I'm not speaking, I do not know anything about what this would mean for somebody who wants to do a master math major, for example, right? I have no clue. But you can talk to some of your seniors who have done this and get a better sense of how best to do it. But I still feel like there's nothing like our program in the country. It's available only in a few different parts of the country. And to not make the most of it would be really a shame. So maybe you will want to strike this balance a little more carefully and after factoring in a little more things. But yes, you have to be good at something at a much deeper level to be able to use that knowledge and use that background in a much more effective fashion to actually ask multidisciplinary questions later on in life. Yeah, I don't know if Nishad agrees with what I said.
I do. And I think at the undergraduate level, you must not look to specialize.
It's too early. I completely.
It's too early. So you may be interested more in biology than in maths, but surely that doesn't mean that you find all of maths boring, right? There must be something that you enjoy. So do whatever you enjoy, you explore it. But I genuinely don't think that you want to be over specialized at the undergraduate level. It's too early, and unfortunately in India, this is, after you finished your 12th, it is the first time that you're seeing science for what it is, the enterprise of science, the business. Before that, you just don't get exposed to it, right? In the West, that's not the case. By the time they're in high school, they're already doing small projects. They're doing a variety of things which are exposing them to the doing of science. So this is the first time that you're seeing science outside of the textbook, right? So don't come with that idea that yahi karna hai. Remain as unspecialized as you can.
Yeah, be open to possibility.
Yeah, and of course, the really smart people, there are very few, and they are able to do whatever they want whenever they want in life. For the rest of us, that doesn't happen. So so once you specialize, it's very unlikely that you're going to change your specialization. Okay, for the majority of us, right? There will be the occasional freaks who are just so good at everything that they can. I know somebody who did a master's in biology, then went and did a PhD in math. Like I mean, like what is that? I don't even know how that works, right? But these smart people can do these things, but that is some like ridiculously low fraction of the population. So we're all, once we specialize, we're not going to change specialization, is what is likely to be true for most of us. Therefore, don't specialize too soon. Because if you differentiate into a neuron right now, then that's it, right? You can't de-differentiate later.
So I have the follow-up question.
I'm going to say something. Is it terribly? It's okay if I say excuse me, because I have another meeting that I have to go into, and I need a little quick break before that. So I'll say bye, all of you. Wonderful talking to all of you, and thank you, Science.
Bye. Thank you, ma'am.
Utkarsh, I'll catch up on your question with Nisha later. Ciao.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, Utkarsh, we'll talk about what you wanted, and then we'll all go away now because it's 1 o'clock.
What?
We'll take your question and then we'll all go away and let you answer.
Yeah. Sure. So you talked about specialization and that. So when do you think? So suppose I work in the microbiology lab. I like it. I like the project. I like everything. So, but there is always something in the like, oh, I never tried cellular biology. I never tried neurobiology. I don't know if I should stick to here or should explore more. So when you stop exploring?
No, that's a good question, particularly now because there are so many different avenues available also now, right? So I think the problem is when there are options. When there were no options, it was all good, right? You didn't really have an option, so you did whatever was available. So I think, okay, so let's not talk general, let's talk specific. So is there anything about what you're doing now that you don't enjoy, Utkarsh?
No, I enjoy everything thoroughly.
Okay, so there's no reason for you to stop doing what you're doing.
Yes.
Correct. You're thinking, "Arey, acha, ye bhi hai, wo to dekha hi nahi hai, ye bhi hai, wo to dekha hi nahi hai," right? So the way to negotiate this is that you don't have to be doing research in neuroscience to enjoy neuroscience, right? So read about neuroscience to satisfy that part of you. You don't have to be doing research in cell biology to be engaged with cell biology. Attend talks by cell biologists. read popular literature and science biology. So you don't, so every single interest cannot be your area of research, right? It's not possible. You're one person. So unless there is any particular reason why you're disliking what you're doing right now, I don't recommend, dropping everything and trying out something else, but try out other things in slightly less time consuming ways, like reading papers, reading books, etc. And that usually will tell you whether you're in the right field or not. So for example, I have a recently developed interest in history, and that doesn't mean that I'm going to ditch what I'm doing now and go and join a PhD in history, right? I can't do that. It's impractical for me to do that. But that doesn't mean that there are no avenues available for me to nourish that interest, right? So you have to take that call. What is an interest that is a primary interest, and what is a secondary interest?
Yes.
That's how.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, shall we all go now?
Yes, sure. Thank you for your time.
No worries. Okay, bye guys. Take care. Stay safe and stay happy. That's all that one can hope for in these times. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we
Bye.
leave the meeting then?
Yeah, I think so.
Bye.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Bye.
And thanks for everyone who decided to attend.
Thank you, Science Club.
Thank you, Science Club. Yeah.
And thanks to Shrutika for actually telling us about this, making it happen.
No credit. Don't say that. Thank you, Science Club. Bye bye.